This coming November 26th, the Caux Round Table and several other organizations here in Minnesota are going to have a special program honoring a good friend of ours who passed away about 10 years ago. He was a local Democratic politician. His name was John Brandel. He was a state senator. He came from central Minnesota, from a small town. And then he was also dean of our Humphrey School of Public Administration and Public Policy. And John, these days, particularly after the midterm American elections in 2018, would be considered an oddity. John was a Catholic and a quote-unquote moderate or conservative Democrat, but his sense of politics and public service was what he used to call the uncommon quest for common ground. In other words, government presumably, even though it's elected by one group of people, presumably in a fair and just society, it is for everybody, somehow. I mean, maybe not everybody, we have criminals, we have this and that, but roughly speaking, it's for the society. And the Caux Round Table principles, ethical principles for government, speak to that point. And so we have worked together with other civil society organizations from the right and from the left, jointly once a year for a program. And this year our program is about collaboration between right and left on poverty. And from the standpoint of the Caux Round Table, I think this is an important thing to do, because what is the ultimate test of a free market, private property, capitalist system? The promise, if you go back to Adam Smith, who many people take as the guru, though he really wasn't, of the capitalist system, is better outcomes for everybody. Somehow it's a win-win situation. It's a system that generates wealth and therefore, to borrow another analogy, lifts all the boats. The tide of wealth as it comes in lifts all the boats, the big boats, but also little boats. Smith is ridiculed by some, admired by others for his notion of the invisible hand, that somehow all these private people working for their own narrow ends interact with each other in a way that creates a good for many people. But what about the poor? The persistence of poor people in capitalism, for many people, particularly socialists, and also a lot of people in religion, a lot of ethicists, is a damnation of the system. If you have poor people year in and year out, how can you say that your system is just or moral? We at the Caux Round Table think, hey, that's a fair question to ask. And therefore, one of the things you need to do is look at the outcomes of the system. And there's another, I think, important comment, goes back to some Roman guy whose name I can't remember right now. His Latin phrase was cui bono, who benefits. Anytime you want to look at a politician or an institution or this or that, ask, who benefits from this? It's a bit cynical, but we human beings are self-interested. So on November 26th, we're bringing together two people from Washington, Ron Haskins from the Brookings Institution, Robert Dorr from a more conservative institution, AEI, and they're going to talk about collaboration between right and left about reducing poverty, better outcomes for people. And our other organizations here, each of us have written an essay for Minnesota on our ideas. So not combining our ideas yet, but our separate ideas about what is needed to make the system work better for people in poverty. Our particular emphasis at the Caux Round Table is to pay attention to, one, free enterprise and wealth creation. The simple idea is, if you want golden eggs, the first thing you got to do is catch the goose that lays the golden egg. But then we argue that essential for that system to work are social capital and human capital. If we do not invest in human capital and social capital, how are we ever going to get the wealth machine working? So if you can join us on November 26th here in Minnesota, please do so. You can find more information on our website.